Your father planted a tree and said, as long as this tree's alive and healthy, so is my son. That was 200 years ago. Today, the tree still stands, defying time. But what of the son? His body is long decayed. All that remains are his bones, twisted in the roots of his grave. The tree had grown tall and strong from the nutrients his corpse had given it. Now the peach tree stood among the ruins of his home. He still watched over the place, had watched as the world had burned itself to the ground, and, like a forest after a wildfire, had begun to regrow. Humans were a far rarer sight in these parts now, leaving him with the foxes and the owls and the mice and the beetles for company, them and one other. He found he quite liked them, especially now that he needn't worry about getting sick anymore. He was particularly fond of the mice that came to eat the fruits of his tree. He'd had one as a pet before he found out just how sick he was. When his father found out mice could carry diseases, he'd released the furry, domesticated thing, for fear that the mouse raised in captivity might somehow have some small illness imperceptible to a normal person that could kill his son. Now, he liked to think that the mice that came by were descended in some way from his pet. It was a far kinder thought than what likely happened instead. The rains poured down today, just as they had the first time he'd managed to leave the tree. It had been years since his father had left the home and a new family had moved in. They had seen him, confused and tinged green like the leaves of his tree, as he stumbled from the bark. They had taken him in, comforted him when he found out his father had left, introduced him to their family with his brothers, sisters, and dogs and cats. He could pet the cats now. Their fur didn't make his nose itch and his throat tight. They gave him some old clothes, never mind how they seemed strange on him and his green skin. They fed him, helped him care for his peach tree, and he offered them the fruits in return. It was all he could offer, really. He played with their children and grew close with one of their sons. His smile felt like the sun on his leaves, his laugh like the rain that watered his roots. Over time, he found he could have no more lived without the boy than he could without air. He became part of the family, their precious little oddity. He was at every event the family hosted, for wandering too far from his tree was dangerous. He was there for sickness, for health, for the greatest joy, and for the worst pain. It was not sickness that took the boy, but a bullet. Soldiers marched and people screamed and ran. Somehow the family survived that first day, all save the boy. There was no sun on his leaves now, no rain on his roots, no air for him to breathe, unless maybe there was a way. He dug a pit in the ground, not unlike how his own father did after he passed. He'd laid the boy in the ground and covered him with dirt. Then, carefully, with as much hope as he could muster, he planted a peach above the boy's body. The war came and went, the family left for safety, and the boy's tree grew slowly, but he could feel his spirit humming in the leaves and branches. The house fell under ruin when the bombs fell, but the two trees remained standing. A decade had passed before the boy emerged from the bog for the first time. As confused and lost as he had been, he offered comfort as the boy once had to him, taught him how to clothe himself in leaves, and offered him what fruit there was this early in the season. The grasses and vine grew. Animals began to make this place their home, and the boys watched it all happen from their trees. They hid when they saw people again, first time in a century, and came out when they were gone. The researchers did not appear often, but the boys did love to play pranks on them, throwing seeds and burrs and small pebbles at them when they weren't looking. They never forgot being human, but there was little to remember. When faced with more than 2 centuries of life, and over the 10 years with red blood, they're still there today, playing in the sun and rain. You can hear their laughter in the tall grass if you listen. They'll toss stones and seeds at you if you get too close to their home. They mean no harm by it. If you toss one back, they'll send a mouse your way.